Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar, Caring for a Loved One with Alzheimer's Disease. We are delighted to have you joining us today to discuss this important topic. My name is Brooks Kenny and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Lotsa Helping Hands. I want to begin by acknowledging our sponsor. Funding for this webinar has been provided by the Alzheimer's Immunotherapy Program of Janssen Alzheimer Immunotherapy and Pfizer, and we are very grateful for their support. Lotsa Helping Hands powers online caring communities that help restore health and balance to caregivers' lives. Our free service brings together caregivers and volunteers through online communities that help organize daily life during times of medical crisis or caregiver exhaustion. At Lotsa, we understand that caregiving is often an extra job that few are prepared for. We also understand that caregivers need help, information, and support. And that's why we have partnerships with organizations like the Alzheimer's Association. Now, beginning today, when you use our service to help in the care of a loved one with Alzheimer's disease, you and anyone who volunteers to help you will have immediate access to information, resources, and support from the Alzheimer's Association. We will be showcasing this new service later in the session. I am honored to have the opportunity to introduce our two presenters this afternoon. First, Monica Moreno, who is the Director of Early Stage Initiatives for the Alzheimer's Association National Office. She is responsible for the oversight and administration of all national programs and strategies serving early stage constituents. She has over 11 years of experience working with people with dementia. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you.
We're also so fortunate to have Carol Blackwell joining us this afternoon. Carol is a care partner to her husband, Bob, who is living with Alzheimer's and will be sharing her story with us. Carol, we are so grateful that you're here with us today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, and I thank you for asking me.
Great. Well, let's take a quick look at our agenda. First, Monica will review the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's disease. Carol will then share her personal story. Next, Monica will remind you of the information and resources you have at your fingertips to support yourself and your loved one. And I will walk you through the first steps for creating your own Alzheimer's care team calendar, powered by Lotsa Helping Hands. So Monica, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Brooks, and thank you again to Lotsa Helping Hands for giving the association an opportunity to help raise awareness of Alzheimer's disease and the services that we provide. Before we get into the 10 warning signs, I really wanted to just take some time to go over a little bit about what is Alzheimer's disease and what is dementia, because there is a tendency for people to use these terms interchangeably, and I want to make sure that we're very clear on the differences between the two. Alzheimer's disease is a progressive and degenerative disease of the brain that destroys brain cells, causing problems with memory, thinking, and behavior. And what happens is that in your brain you have neurons that really are the messengers to your body. So they tell your body to swallow, to blink. And what happens with Alzheimer's disease is there are these tangles or plaques that build up inside the neurons that kill the neuron. So if you can imagine kind of the telephone game I always tell people where you have 10 people lined up and they send the message from the first person to the last person, well, just think of those people being a neuron. And if you remove some of these neurons because they've died, there's no way for the message to get from one part or from the brain to the part of the body to tell it what to do. Dementia is not a single disease. It's kind of an umbrella term like heart disease that really covers a wide range of specific medical conditions, including Alzheimer's disease. The symptoms of dementia can be caused by Alzheimer's or other diseases such as Lewy body, normal pressure hydrocephalus, and Parkinson's, just to name a few. The most common form of dementia, however, is Alzheimer's disease, which really makes up anywhere between 60 to 80% of the cases of dementia. So as we move on to the next slide, I just wanted to share with you a little bit of the facts and figures that we recently released regarding Alzheimer's disease. We do know that it is the 6th leading cause of death in the U.S. It is the 5th leading for those over the age of 65. Currently, there is an estimated 5.4 million Americans who are living with this disease, and every 68 seconds, someone else develops the disease. baby boomers are at largest risk right now for getting the disease, and that's because they've all started turning 65 as of January 1st of last year. And there's an estimated 800,000 individuals with the disease, or 1 in 7, who are currently living alone. So we do know and recognize the challenges that people face in living with this disease, but imagine having to face these challenges on their own without anyone there to assist them. And then, of course, our caregivers. There's over 15 million caregivers who are helping these individuals every day deal with the challenges of this disease and really trying to juggle working and providing care to that person, as well as all the other responsibilities that come in their daily life. And Alzheimer's disease is the only disease of the top 10 that cannot be prevented, slowed, or cured. Again, as I mentioned, age is the greatest risk factor. We do have about 200,000 people who are living with younger onset Alzheimer's disease, and those are individuals who've been diagnosed under the age of 55. The total number of those individuals is less than about 10% of all cases of the disease. And then just wanted to share some statistical information regarding African Americans and Hispanics and their risk for getting the disease as well. African Americans are about twice as more likely, and Hispanics 1.5 more times more likely to have Alzheimer's disease than their white counterparts. And that's typically because they tend to suffer more from other conditions such as high blood pressure and diabetes, which are known risk factors for Alzheimer's and other dementias. Now, the next slide that you're looking at is the escalating epidemic slide. And while the number of Americans who are dying from other diseases is decreasing, you'll see that for Alzheimer's disease, we are headed in the other direction, which is not where we want to be. You'll see that the decline in stroke and prostate and breast cancer is decreasing because of the funding for advancing research, the diagnostic processes and tests that they have available, and the treatments that they have available to cure these diseases. And again, going back to the fact that with Alzheimer's, there is not a cure, it can't be prevented, and it cannot be slowed. And you'll also see on that slide that there are more people who are suffering from Alzheimer's disease than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. So it gives you a good indication of the epidemic of this disease within this country. So let's move on to the 10 warning signs, and everyone's always interested to know what are the warning signs. Let's go to the next slide, please. Now, the first warning sign that we tell people about are memory changes that disrupt daily life. So in typical aging, it's normal to forget names or appointments, but then to remember them later. With Alzheimer's disease, someone is forgetting something that they recently learned. They have difficulty learning new things or new tasks. What's most common that we hear a lot about is asking the same information over and over again, or the same question. Relying on memory aids or family members. So a lot of people will use sticky notes. They'll start developing coping strategies to try to help them remember things that they're having difficulty doing. I will share with you as we go through these 10 warning signs just some personal stories of individuals that I've had the honor to actually work with, and some of the experiences that they've had in each of these warning signs. So with this first warning sign, we have one of our national early stage advisors who had talked about how he was continually starting to miss business meetings. He wasn't able to remember what was discussed at those meetings, and he had difficulty keeping up with the conversations going on at the table. And when he would come to these meetings, he would forget the action items that were from the previous meetings. He just, no matter what he did, he could not remember what those action items were. So the coping strategy that he would use is he would say to people, I don't have my notes. What do your notes say that those action items were? So that's just an example of how memory changes are can be disrupting to an individual's daily life. The second warning sign are challenges in planning or problem solving. Typical aging is, occasional errors when balancing a checkbook. When someone has Alzheimer's disease, they have problems developing or following a plan. Working with numbers is something that we see very common. Problems with following a familiar recipe or any type of activity that they've done over and over again. Keeping track of bills. Again, not just missing a bill, but maybe all of a sudden you're getting notices that are saying they're going to cut off your gas or your water. Challenges with concentration and really staying focused. And this is a big one, taking longer to do things than it used to take you to do. We have an individual who was a vice president for a bank, had very prestigious position and would meet with the senators and do tours. And she started noticing that she was having difficulty helping her grandson with simple math homework. Now, this is a woman who was around numbers her whole life. So that was a signal to her that something just wasn't right. The other thing that she started to notice was that when she would get voicemail, she would listen to those messages, and she was no longer able to really concentrate and understand what those messages were saying. So she would send her voicemails to her assistant, who would then type those out, and she would use a highlighter to highlight the high points within those messages to try to help her to be able to follow up with those phone calls. The third sign is difficulty completing familiar tasks. In typical aging, occasionally someone may need assistance in using a VCR, or if you bought them a new microwave. But once you show them and demonstrate this to them on a continual basis, they're able to retain that information and then follow that process and put the movie on. Actually, I don't think we use VCRs anymore. They're DVDs. So you could have trouble with shopping or cooking. Someone with the disease has difficulty, again, completing daily tasks. Driving is a big issue with people with the disease, and someplace that they've always gone to and driven to, but now they're having difficulty locating it or getting there. Managing a budget at work, or just remembering rules of a favorite game. We have one of our advisors who was a very skilled, trained facilitator, and she helped organizations with conflict resolution, and she traveled all over the country to do this. And one day she was getting ready for a business presentation with a very tough client, and this had been a presentation that she had done at least 78 times, so it was a familiar task for her. And she just had to go into her PowerPoint presentation and just make a few changes and add some new information. And she was not able to remember how to do that. Now, this is a woman who had given presentations hundreds and hundreds of times and had built PowerPoints throughout her career, and she was not able to do that. And at some point, she had to call her husband and ask what was wrong with her, and had to cancel that presentation. So just another example of the third warning sign. With the fourth warning sign, confusion with time or place. In typical aging, someone may get confused about the day of the week, but then they're able to figure it out later. I know we all kind of go through this, even me. With someone with the disease can tend to lose track of dates, seasons, and the passage of time. I've had experiences where I'll ask someone to look out the window and tell me what season it is, and they're not able to identify that, or forgetting where one is or how they got there. We have an individual who had gone on a business trip, and when he woke up in his hotel, he had no idea where he was. He didn't know what date it was or what month it was. So he got very scared, and he turned on the TV to look for clues to see if that would give him an indication of where he was. He started looking through his briefcase for any signs to be able to help him. When he was finally able to piece together all of these different information, with the clues, it was 20 minutes after the meeting that he was to attend had started. So this is an extreme case of confusion to time or place, but prior to that, he really had not had this type of experience before, and that really caused him to go and see his physician. Another, something else to be on the lookout for is getting lost. Going or walking or driving to a place that's familiar and not being able to remember how to get back, or getting lost getting there, so you never actually reach your destiny. The warning sign 5, trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. In typical aging, vision changes are typical because of the aging of the individual or the eye, such as cataracts. But with somebody with the disease, they have a diminishing ability to track visual surroundings, difficulty reading, judging distances. It's not uncommon for some people with the disease to fall for no reason, and that just has to do with the trouble of judging distances or that spatial issue that they're experiencing. And we had an individual who was an avid reader, and he had purchased the Harry Potter book, and he recognized that he was having difficulty remembering the paragraph that he had just read. It took him 1 year to finish that book. And then, of course, driving. When we talk about those spatial images, driving becomes one of the signs that people tend to notice where there's been changes. When you think about someone who's experiencing these symptoms and they have to drive and they're looking at the rear view mirror and the side view mirror and then all of the activity and stimulation going on, these individuals tend to become really upset and start making very unsafe mistakes while they're driving. The warning sign number 6, New problems with words in speaking or writing. In typical aging, it's normal to have trouble finding the right word. With Alzheimer's disease, there's difficulty and problems following or joining a conversation. A lot of times you'll see someone become a little bit more isolated or withdrawn because they're having trouble participating and staying in the conversation. Difficulty tracking the conversations. They may be talking to you and all of a sudden just stop in the middle of a sentence and then not be able to move forward. And then trouble with vocabulary, finding the right word or calling things by the wrong name. We had an individual who was an avid emailer, and her friends and family started to notice that as she was sending emails, they weren't making sense. She also noticed that it would typically take her about a minute to send an email out, and now it was taking her much longer because it was becoming harder and harder for her to do this. And that's what actually caused her to go see her physician as well. The 7th warning sign, misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. In typical aging, misplacing things from time to time is very common. I know I do it all the time with my keys. But someone with the disease really is experiencing putting things in unusual places. I read the wallet and the fruit bowl. I kind of do that already. But, you know, if you're finding keys in the refrigerator or it's not just making sense why someone would put that there, that can be a warning sign that something might not be right. Accusing others of stealing. This is something that's very common as well, where the individual thinks that they put something in a place and they really didn't. And so what happens is they start accusing friends or family who live in the same household of taking those items. We had an individual with this warning sign who actually had gone off to see his physician, where he had been to numerous times, and when he left the office, he was unable to find his way back to the parking garage, and he was not able to retrace his steps as to how he got there. So he had to call his wife, and she had to verbally tell him over the phone and give him directions on how to get back. The 8th warning sign, decreased or poor judgment. In typical aging, we all make bad decisions every once in a while, but with someone with the disease, you will definitely start to notice changes in the decision making and in their judgment. A lot of what you see in this area is in driving, poor judgment in how they're driving, not observing the traffic signs, going too fast or too slow, leaving the stove on in the house, cooking and not remembering that they actually started cooking, and you know, whether there's a fire that gets started. You'll also see, and we always encourage people to check, you know, are there large amounts of money that are missing from their checking accounts that don't make sense? If that's happening, then, you know, do a little bit more investigation on where is that money going, who are they writing checks out to, because they might not really remember or recognize what they're doing. The 9th warning sign is withdrawal from work or social activities. In typical aging, we may feel periodically weary of work and social obligations, which is normal. But with someone with the disease, you'll again start to see some withdrawing from activities, family gatherings, how to engage, or they'll not engage in their favorite hobby. The reason that this happens is because it's becoming harder and harder, again, to follow the conversations. There's too much stimulation that's going on, and they tend to really like just to stay in an environment that is safe and comfortable for them. We had an advisor who would avoid business meetings and interaction with people, so she would shut the door in her office to try to catch up because it was so difficult for her to stay on top of her work, and there was just too much stimulation going on in her work environment. And then the 10th warning sign is changes in mood and personality. In typical aging, developing very specific ways of doing things and is normal for all of us. And becoming irritable if the routine changes, you know, I think I'm kind of becoming like that as well. But with Alzheimer's disease, we tend to notice that there's an increasingly display of signs of confusion, suspicion, fear, anxiety, and agitation. We had one gentleman and his wife where they talked very openly about the fact that he had always been a very happy-go-lucky gentleman, but he was becoming more and more irritable, particularly when he was driving. Again, going back to that overstimulation and too much going on. And so that's when they started to notice this change in his mood and his personality, and that's what prompted them to go to see the physician. Now, you know, the next question after knowing the 10 warning signs is, what do you do next? And we encourage everyone that if you see any of these signs in yourself or a family member or a friend, encourage them to go see a physician, because this is really the best way to get a full workup to determine what's going on. It doesn't always have to be Alzheimer's disease. There's other factors that can be causing the symptoms of dementia. It could be a urinary tract infection, something very simple that can actually be resolved with medication. But you need a physician to actually do that workup. And the benefits to getting early detection for the disease is, number one, you get the maximum benefit from available treatments. The sooner that you know what the disease is or the diagnosis that you're dealing with, the sooner then that you can start taking medications to help with those symptoms. It also provides more time for the family as well as that individual living with the disease to be part of that decision-making process. What is going to happen as the disease progresses? How is this going to impact the family financially as well as emotionally? And then put that plan in place so that everyone knows what should happen and they've had that conversation as the disease progresses. And then most importantly, or just as important, you'll be able to access support and services as soon as you possibly can to help you through this journey. I do want to talk a little bit about the fact that these caregivers, 15 million of them, are on this very long and stressful and ever-changing journey. We talk about their day as the 36-hour day because it just seems never-ending. And I think to have a better understanding of the challenges that caregivers face, we thought that we would have Carol Blackwell talk to you about some of her personal experiences. Now, Carol is the spouse and care partner for Bob Blackwell, a 2009 Alzheimer's Association National Early Stage Advisor. She was employed by the CIA for 19 years as a trainer and now works part-time as a professional leadership coach. She has been instrumental in initiating memory cafes, which are social gatherings for individuals living with dementia and their care partners in her local community. Carol and Bob live in Great Falls, Virginia, which is just outside Washington, D.C., and together they have a daughter, Jen, a son, Rob, and they also have 5 grandchildren. In her spare time, she is the director of her church bell choir for 20 years and enjoys hiking and biking. And so it is with great pleasure that I introduce you to Carol Blackwell.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me start by telling you a little bit about my husband, Bob. Bob was born in 1942. He was born in a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia, Sandy Springs, and he's the only child, doted upon by his parents. Bob went to the University of Georgia to get his bachelor's and his master's in political science, and then he went to Michigan to get his PhD, and that's where we met because he was a teaching assistant and I was one of the students in his class, and of course we never dated while he was my instructor, and he did not give me a very good grade, so I vowed that I would wreak revenge on him, and I did because I married him. And made his life miserable, I guess. Anyway, the two of us have 2 children, as I said, Jen and Rob, and 5 wonderful grandchildren. Bob started working at Emory University in Atlanta and taught as a professor there for about 5 or 6 years. His dissertation for his PhD had been on the Soviet Union and Soviet leaders, and that was his interest. So he sent out a resume to the CIA, and they were very interested in the topic because at that time, of course, the Cold War was going on. So they hired him, and we moved up to Virginia in 1975, and he worked beginning as an analyst at the CIA and then as a manager and an executive. And he had a wonderful 30-year career. He loved it. He really enjoyed it. So when time came for him to retire, when he turned around 60-something, he didn't really want to retire, and I knew that. So I took the changes of the fact that he appeared to be sort of apathetic and not really talking so much about his work as a sign that really it was because he was thinking about retirement. He also said it was stressful because his own mother had Alzheimer's. She just died 2 weeks ago. And he was trying to work with her finances. So I didn't think that much about it, and this was back in 2004. But gradually, he was unable to get another job, and that's unusual because he always was very sought after for jobs. He retired in 2005 and started working for a consulting company, but would come home and tell me that he couldn't focus on the projects, that he had trouble that they were difficult, but other people didn't seem to be having problems with them. So I got a little worried then, and when he was let go from that, and Bob had never been let go from a job before, I knew we had to go see the doctor. He was only 64, and it seemed to me that was way too young to have Alzheimer's, but we did know it was in the family, and he was diagnosed after several tests in the fall of 2006 with Alzheimer's disease. So he went from working 8 hours a day to being home with me 24 hours a day. So we had to figure out what we could do to make our lives work. And I also will say that when Bob got the diagnosis, the doctor said, Dr. Blackwell, you have Alzheimer's, you can no longer work, you shouldn't be driving. Here, try this medicine, we'll see if it works, and that's it. It was pretty devastating. We really didn't even know where to go, what to do. So it was pretty lonely in the beginning. We did get involved in it initially. Later, Bob took some courses at the university. He was still driving then, still a good driver at that point. We blew our travel budget on traveling because we didn't know how many years we'd have. So we went to New Zealand, we went to Ireland, we went everywhere we had wanted to go. And Bob also developed, he loved to take pictures, so he became more of a photographer, joined some photography clubs. So at the beginning, even though it was a difficult diagnosis, life was pretty good. It sort of went on. I didn't feel that there was much of a stress of a caregiver then. I worried about him, but he was able to pretty much do what he'd done, particularly because he got on Aricept and Namenda, and that was a godsend. That really helped him for a while. However, gradually, he also joined a clinical trial, and that was wonderful because he was able to talk with the doctors and nurses and felt that people really cared, and he felt that he was doing something to help. We got active in the Alzheimer's Association, where he was, as he said, an early stage advisor. He spoke at one of the galas. We went to the forums. We marched on Capitol Hill. We did a lot of the walks, and that made us both feel like we were trying to do something. But gradually the disease takes its toll. It's now been over 5 years. Bob, last year, he came home and said he'd gotten lost going to his class. And I realized then that he couldn't drive anymore. So he doesn't drive anymore. He doesn't go to the courses because it got to the point where he couldn't stay focused on what was going on. He didn't understand what the topic was. He no longer is in his photography group because he can't really figure out how to do the settings on the photography. As a matter of fact, there's not a whole lot that he can do anymore. He can't work on the computer. He's no longer able to read. He has trouble finding words and speaking. Can't really do household chores. So the disease goes along, and you don't know whether or not it will be gradual. For him, it was gradual for a good many years, but then last year he started a rather steep decline. And because the stimulation of travel that we were doing was too much for him, so we can now no longer travel. So that makes it difficult as well. My main challenges now are trying to keep him engaged in things that interest him, things that make him happy. And since it's hard for him to do things, that's not a whole lot. He's interested in the World War II and the Civil War, so we've got a bunch of DVDs that we put on for him to watch, but I want him to be active. So now he's enrolled in a daycare 3 days a week. We called it an activity center, and he goes with people, which he loves to do. He does activities, and he enjoys that a lot. He also is in Friends Club, which is a place in Bethesda, Maryland for men with Alzheimer's, and he likes that and has friends there. For me, I find the women, as we meet when he goes to Friends Club, it's our support group. We go to lunch, we talk with each other. It's very important as you go through this journey with this disease to have a community of people that you can deal with. So talking with these women, doing the Memory Cafe, where it's for people with Alzheimer's and their care partners, getting together, socializing, having fun, having lunch, has been a godsend. Because even though there's others in community, there's something about dealing with people that are going through what you're going through that's special. So what I would have liked things to have happened when he first was diagnosed. Number one, I would have liked for him to be able to talk with somebody that had the disease in the early stages, to tell them what it was like, how life was not over, how you could still stay active and do things. Number two, it would have been nice just to have friends that would come to actually just take him places. People would ask, well, what can I do? But it's hard for me to say at that point. And they didn't have lots of helping hands, which would have been a godsend for us. But just to take an afternoon and take him to lunch or to a movie. As I said, we get along well, but after 24/7, he'd love to have other people around, other stimulation. Maybe someone that was interested in photography that would take him out on a shoot and help him with the camera and go to just a park where they could take lots of pictures. Somebody to share his hobby. Later, it would have been helpful if somebody could have driven him to class. That would have been a break for him. It would have been great for me to have those few moments just to concentrate, because as they get into the later stages, they tend to follow you around. And I love them, but that can drive you crazy. Someone from church did offer, 2 men from church said that they played golf together, and Bob doesn't play golf, but they said let him just come with us and walk the courses while we play golf, and he did, and he loved that. Another man from church came over one afternoon to talk to him about World War II. So we're not looking at things that are just humongous things, but just a few hours, maybe once or twice a week, would have been very helpful. So that would have been great if we'd known that early on. So I think the Lotsa Helping Hands is just such a wonderful idea, and thank you for letting me talk about it.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you so much for sharing your story and really giving us a better insight into the challenges that caregivers face on a daily basis.
You're welcome.
The Alzheimer's Association has been in existence for over 30 years, and we were actually started by caregivers. Actually, our founding individual, Jerry Stone, just celebrated his 99th birthday, and his wife had the disease, and back in the day he had researched to try to find organizations that had programs and services for people who were living with this disease, and he found nothing. And so throughout all of these years, we have really grown to an organization that is considered the Center for Help and Hope. You'll see on the slide in front of you that we kind of listed a number of questions that we see commonly asked by caregivers or individuals who are concerned about the disease. And this really just depicts, and I'll walk you through it, the types of services that the Alzheimer's Association offers to people like Carol and to Bob to help you through this journey. So we talked, at length today about the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's disease, and the questions that people typically ask is, when does forgetting become a problem? I talked a lot about what is typical aging and what is Alzheimer's disease. And so the association offers programs like the 10 warning signs, which are workshops at the local chapters throughout the country. We also have a free e-learning course on our website where anyone can come. You just sign up and you actually are able to take that course and get the information that I shared with you a little bit more in depth. And it also has videos from people who were living with the disease that talk about the symptoms that they recognized that prompted them to go to see their physician. Another question that we hear a lot from caregivers are, what are the programs and resources that are available in my community? With the Alzheimer's Association, we are fortunate that we have over 70 chapters nationwide with 300 points of service. These local chapters know your communities inside and out. They know the resources that are available, whether it's a neurologist who can do testing to see whether or not the symptoms are related to Alzheimer's disease. Again, the workshops, as well as referrals, and that could be to a home health agency, it could be to transportation options. There's just a full range of referrals and resources that they have available at their fingertips. And then one of the other services that they're able to provide is what we call care consultations. So these are master level clinicians who are able to either go out to the home or speak to you over the telephone and really get an in-depth understanding of what's going on and what are the needs that as a family you have, and then be able to identify the resources in the community that are able to help you and develop a plan of care, not only for the current time and what's happening right now, but really long term. And as the disease progresses and the needs change, they're there to kind of walk through that with you and help you find those local resources. And then, of course, one of our newest products that we'll be launching soon is Community Resource Finder. So it's nice that you would know what you need, but where do you go to find it? And so Community Resource Finder is actually an online system that will allow you to search, find, and access local resources based on your zip code, or if you're a long-distance caregiver, the zip code of where the individual is living. And I can tell you we have about 23 different verticals or different categories of services and programs, so it's directly linked to whatever programs our chapters are offering as well, and we look to have that be launched in the next couple months. Another question that we hear a lot about is, how do I determine what to do next? Unfortunately, a lot of people who get this diagnosis in their families don't even know where to start. And so they have to really dig on their own to find out about the disease, what's going to happen as it progresses, and then what can they do in order to really face the daily challenges that the disease exhibits. And so then how do you coordinate care too as the disease progresses? So the Alzheimer's Navigator is a new online assessment program that we're planning to launch in the next couple months, and it really provides a way for caregivers and people with the disease who are in the early stages to evaluate their needs based on what's happening right now, to execute an action step, which are divided into priority steps or important steps, and then gets them connected with local programs and services. So based on the responses to a welcome assessment, the users then receive that customized action plan that says, based on your responses, you should consider doing these things, and then it provides the suggested resources in order to accomplish that. What's really nice about this new program is it allows you to build a care team so that the burden or the responsibilities don't have to fall on one person. So if you have 10 action steps that you need to complete and you've got 3 brothers or sisters, you can actually divvy up those responsibilities and track that all within the system. So we're really excited about that launch. And then, of course, how do you coordinate all of this while you're dealing with all the other challenges that you have, whether it's with work or other things going on in your life? And that's where the Alzheimer's Care Team Calendar by Lotsa Helping Hands really comes in very handy. I know that we talk a lot about, in some, as Carol had mentioned, in the very early stages, things were kind of easy, right? I mean, they didn't notice a lot of changes in their life, but we really encourage people to start planning ahead, and so that calendar can be very beneficial in getting in there, creating that care team, so that when things change, because you never know how quickly this disease is going to progress, and a lot of times the changes happen overnight, you'll have already had that team in place, the calendar in place, and then you can start using that, which Brooks will go into a little bit more detail as we go further into the presentation. And then the next question that a lot of caregivers have, which is very common, is where do I go to find support and connect with others like me? Carol spoke very eloquently about the fact that she found great support in being able to speak to other caregivers and share their experiences and stories, because no one else is experiencing those things other than the caregivers that she was encountering. And so the association has launched a new Alz Connected, which is currently on our site. It's an online social networking community for people with Alzheimer's and their caregivers, as well as other individuals. It could be family members, it could be long-distance caregivers or professionals. And through this platform, the users can connect and communicate. They can pose questions. There's a solution center. So I know we had a lot of questions come in about how do you deal with this behavior. All's connected. You can actually post your question, and caregivers will respond back to you as to what has worked best for them. And then caregivers can also go ahead and rate those. So if they actually tried that technique, they can say whether or not it was a good suggestion. On this site, you can also create public and private groups, which are dedicated around a specific topic. Again, the association offers support groups. These are for caregivers, people who are living with the disease in the early stage, as well as that younger onset group who really have their own challenges because they are under the age of 65, probably still working and are raising children. And then there's specialty groups, and those could be individuals from various backgrounds or diverse backgrounds. And so we do offer services for that as well. I do want to make mention of our new Caregiver Center. I know I can go on and on about all the services that we provide, but we will be launching towards the end of April our new Caregiver Center. And so when you come to our website, alz.org, I don't want you to be overwhelmed, because the Alzheimer's and Dementia Caregiver Center is really going to put all of this type of information and programs in one place and make it very easy for you to find the services that you need. It will talk about daily care, stages and behaviors, how do you get support, safety, care options, and then really importantly, financial and legal planning. So I encourage all of you, if you have specific questions about the situations that you're dealing with, to call our 800 number. There is someone, a live person available 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Again, we have over 70 chapters throughout the country and 300 points of service, and we have master level clinicians on the phone who can actually help you get connected with your local chapter and give you some resources, and just have someone to talk through about the challenges that you're facing and help you get to those resources that can help you with those challenges. And now I think I will turn it back to Brooks.
Great. Thank you so much, Monica. I really appreciate both your remarks and Carol. Thank you so much for sharing this information. It's so valuable to caregivers across our country who are managing their loved ones' care. As you shared, caregivers are often the primary source of communication to family members. They often serve as the glue, as Carol was sharing, to their loved ones' social circles. They're masters at organization, taking care of medical appointments, household responsibilities, and their own work duties. But despite the numbers of caregivers out there, we find that most report they feel isolated and alone, and most don't ask for help or find it really difficult to do so. Often caregiving comes without a lot of warning and can create a lot of disruption in the family. We understand here at Lotsa that caregiving is an extra job that few are prepared for. And so today we're announcing with the Alzheimer's Association our service to make life easier for caregivers, volunteers, and those in need. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the service now and then show it to you as well. Private communities created with the Alzheimer's Care Calendar empower a caregiver's own family, friends, neighbors, and colleagues, what we call a person's circles of community, to come together to provide support and help to the caregiver and family. Some of you on the webinar today may be a caregiver. Many of you may know a caregiver. Others may be providing services to caregivers. For those of you who are sitting in your seat right now and you've heard Carol's story and you identify yourself as a caregiver of a loved one with Alzheimer's, chances are you've been asked that question, what can I do to help? Chances are you feel overwhelmed by these well-meaning offers from friends and family. And now you can create your own care team calendar with the Alzheimer's Association. So if someone asks how they can help, consider asking them to create a care team calendar for you, or you can create one for yourself and invite friends and family and neighbors to participate. I'm going to walk you through the steps of doing that right now. It's very easy to get started. It takes just about a minute to create an Alzheimer's Care Team calendar powered by Lotsa Helping Hands. You can visit lotsahelpinghands.com and click on the Create tab on the top of the menu here. And while filling out the form, you can choose the Alzheimer's Association from our list of resources in order to create your Alzheimer's Care Team calendar. So that's one way you can create it. Better yet, you can visit alz.org, and under the We Can Help menu, you can click on Lotsa Helping Hands to create your care team calendar. So let's pretend that we've done that, and again, the form is very simple. It takes just about a minute to create, and anyone can create it. If you're the caregiver, you can create it, or you can invite someone close to you to do it for you. Here's a view of a blank calendar. We've just created it, so there's not a lot of information in it. It's called Todd's Helping Hands. I want to walk you through the geography so you understand some of the aspects of these communities. On the top is the community name, Todd's Helping Hands. Below the name are tabs that help you get around your community. The Me tab is the person signed in this case, Mary Smith. The People tab lists all the members of your community, all of those people who have offered to help you when you've shared what's going on with you and your loved one. Friends, neighbors, colleagues, people in your religious community, all those folks that have said, what can I do to help you? I know there's got to be something I can do. The administration tab that you see there is the central place for coordinators, those people who organize the community. They organize everything within the community, and that's their central tab where they can find information and provide customizations. On the left are community sections, and these are unique to the community, and then there are some areas of the sections that are provided across all communities. So let me tell you a little bit more about what I mean. Coordinators can post announcements here. You can store vital information that is unique to the particular situation, whether it's financial, legal, health information that you want to store inside your community. You can share photos, and you can have members share well wishes to the family. Coordinators can also create custom sections here with information that might meet the unique needs of the family, such as personal blogs or sample recipes. In the case of Carol and Bob, there could be a community section here that talks about Bob's hobbies, or volunteers needed with expertise in World War II who love storytelling. So there can be things within this community that really make it unique and your own, and you can customize it, and we certainly can help you do that. And here's a view of the care team calendar. This is where the coordinator, with input from the caregiver and family, can post the volunteer tasks that are needed to help in a particular situation. So it's a really easy way to organize all those well-meaning offers. Maybe a caregiver would like to have meals on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evenings, or help with providing rides for the person living with the disease, or maybe visits to provide some respite for the caregiver and some additional support and interest to the person living with the disease, so that everybody can get their needs met. So there's a lot of different ways that the calendar can be used specifically to meet the particular needs of the caregiver and family. What's also nice is the system sends reminders 1 month, 1 week, and 1 day in advance, so everybody is up to speed on those commitments. And the reminders go not only to the volunteer who raised their hand and said, I'll bring a meal on Wednesday evening, but it also goes to any coordinators in the community. And oftentimes the caregiver has those administrative rights in the community. So in the case of Carol, she may be one of the coordinators listed, but one of her friends is organizing meals for her and Bob. And so if someone signs up to bring a meal, Carol will be notified. She'll know who's coming and when they're coming, but she doesn't have to organize it. Her friends are taking care of that for her. And everybody in the community knows who's doing what when, and it keeps everything running very smoothly to manage those daily tasks that can often become a challenge. In all of the care team calendar communities, we're also displaying helpful information from the Alzheimer's Association to really assist you in your caregiving journey. Monica shared the breadth and depth of information that the association has to provide, and we felt it very important in our communities to ensure that anyone who is participating in the care team calendar can immediately access these resources. So if someone's volunteering to help Carol and Bob, they may want to learn a little bit more about Alzheimer's. They want to understand what Carol's experience might be, as well as Bob's. And so within these communities that are created, you can immediately access resources to the Alzheimer's Association at your fingertips. There's also a link here to the message boards provided by the Alzheimer's Association, and this is where you can connect with others. And I know Monica already shared a bit about that, but I just wanted to show you that that's connected to as well. So remember, just to wrap up, that you can create a community from alz.org under the We Can Help menu. And you can click on Lotsa Helping Hands and create your care team calendar and build out your community of volunteers who have expressed interest in supporting you if you or your loved one is experiencing Alzheimer's disease. The next part of our session here is to review questions that you all posed in advance. And many, many, many of you posted questions. We actually have more than 300 people who have registered for our webinar today. So as you can probably imagine, we have a very long list of questions that came in. I think it was more than 75 people posed questions in advance of our webinar, and so we really appreciate that. And unfortunately, we won't be able to answer all of them today, but we have identified 4 questions that were fairly similar across the board, perhaps repeated provided that we thought would be very valuable to the entire audience today. And then once we're done answering those questions, we will provide you with some places where if you don't see the answer to your question today and you need more help, we're going to tell you how to get help. The first is, for Monica, how do you handle caring for your loved one with Alzheimer's disease when you do not live near them? I didn't know if you wanted to begin to address that for the audience.
Absolutely, and this is really a very common question. Being a long-distance caregiver can complicate the caregiving role. And so what we tell long-distance caregivers is a couple of things that they should really consider doing. One is that when you're visiting the person that you're concerned about or who has the disease, identify what kind of help is needed. Check the refrigerator to see, is there food in there? If there is it spoiled? Are the bills getting paid? Or again, are they getting notices saying that their service is going to be shut off? What's the personal appearance of the person with dementia like? Does it look like they're changing their clothes, that they're toileting themselves, that they're clean? And then if they are driving, take a drive with them and see whether you think that they're driving safely. This is really going to help you identify what types of services or assistance is needed in the home to keep that person as independent and at home for as long as possible. The other thing that we suggest to long-distance caregivers is to build a list of contact people and resources that can help you to coordinate care from a distance. That could be friends or neighbors of your family member, other family members that might live in the area. You could also look into home care services available in the community. There's geriatric care managers, which are really very beneficial because they build a relationship with that individual, look at the needs, and then find the resources within that community. And then also keep that long-distance caregiver in the loop as to what's going on and what services are needed. And then when you go to visit your family member who has the disease, make the most of your visits. If you can try to attend appointments with them to see the doctor while you're in town, talk with friends and neighbors and family who interact with that individual and get their view on how things are going and if they're noticing any changes. And of course, always spend quality time with them as much as you can. And then try to get multiple family members or even friends involved in that caregiving process. We always suggest in holding a family meeting where you can discuss roles and responsibilities, and then always try to recognize the differences and the strengths of each of those family members. Someone may not be a hands-on caregiver but doesn't have an issue with taking care of the bills, and then that takes some of that responsibility off of you. And then divide the tasks as best as you can based on the strengths of those other family members. And then always continue to talk and have that conversation on how things are going. I think what's really great about the Alzheimer's Care Team calendar is that we hear a lot from caregivers where someone will say, do you need anything? And it's either the caregiver is uncomfortable asking for help or they really just don't know what they need right now, whereas this calendar gives that opportunity to let those individuals who are offering to help the opportunity to do so in not an invasive way or one that makes the caregiver comfortable for actually asking for that help. So.
Thanks so much, Monica. I thought your answer was wonderful and really comprehensive. I just wanted to underscore your last point to reinforce something that we see often here at Lotsa Helping Hands is when people are at a distance and that sibling who perhaps lives on a different coast is feeling oftentimes, very helpless that they aren't involved, let's say in mom or dad's care, but creating a care team calendar is a way for them to stay very involved. If they want to be the main organizer of the calendar and organize the people perhaps on the other coast who are managing their loved one's care, who are the ones that are able to deliver the meals or provide a ride. But giving someone who's at a distance an opportunity to get involved that way is a great way for them to feel part of the support system. So I just wanted to underscore that. Thanks so much. Well, let's move on to the second question. Probably, Carol, this is a great one for you to respond to. As a family member, what is the best way to support a caregiver from your perspective?
I would say, well, I think I would say, but actually I'm kind of echoing what you had said as well. It's difficult for me when someone says, can I do something? I just only say, no, everything's fine, everything's fine. But as a matter of fact, there are things that I might like to be able to do. To go to lunch with friends, just to get away for a while. So it's helpful if if I had the Lotsa Helping Hands and had one there, that would be great for somebody just to volunteer to do something, for me to put something out. Because then if you say, well, could you come on Tuesday? I want to have lunch, and the person, well, Tuesday doesn't work. Can we do Wednesday? It gets into this back and forth. So I think it's really helpful if people can have something that they can sign up for. Basically, I think it's very helpful just to listen to the person, because sometimes we just want to talk. We know that the family member can't solve the problem, can't change the situation, and sometimes it's even more difficult if they try, well, did you do this, and did you do this, and did you do that? Sometimes it's helpful just for them to listen, to say, yeah, I understand, it must be difficult. And that's good. That makes me feel that I've been listened to and that people are concerned. One thing that doesn't help, I've had some people come up and say, oh, what you're going through is so terrible. I don't see how you deal with it. I don't know what I would do. I don't think I can manage it. You must be a saint. And actually, that's not very helpful, because it would have probably been a pretty good day up to that point. So then you start second guessing yourself. So just people saying, I want to help, what can I do, is great. And people listening is the second thing I would say would be the best thing to do.
Great. Thank you so much. That's wonderful feedback for everyone listening today, I'm sure. Thank you. We will take one more question that came in from many people, so we wanted to be sure to address it. How do you deal with the driving issue when someone has Alzheimer's and you are afraid for their safety? Monica, do you want to talk a bit to that?
Absolutely. This is a very common question that comes up, and I just want to make mention that at some point, every person with Alzheimer's disease will no longer be able to drive. It's a sensitive issue, and it's a very difficult conversation to have. So what we encourage caregivers to do is, if you can, discuss the issue of driving right after diagnosis. This really has to be a continual conversation that happens throughout that process. Make decisions together about when it's time to stop. We've heard from people living with the disease where they've actually sat down and said, when this starts to happen, take the keys away. Let's make an agreement that I'm going to stop driving when this starts to happen, or when I start to show these types of behaviors in driving or unsafe driving. If you have not had an opportunity to have those discussions ahead of time, then it's up to the caregiver really to initiate that dialogue and to express their concerns. When someone starts driving, it is taking away their independence and their ability to go places on their own and do things. And it's a very difficult thing to give up, I think, for any of us. But try to offer alternative transportation options. What's available in your community? Is there a volunteer service or organization that can actually take them to where they want to go, whether it's to appointments or social gatherings? Is there someone who goes to that event that could pick them up? So there's a lot of different options that might be available within your community, but do some research on that and then share those alternatives with the person with the disease. And then sometimes it doesn't always go well, that conversation, and sometimes what families will do is ask a physician to write a no driving prescription to just help reinforce the issue that that person should not be driving. And that honestly has really helped a lot with some of the people with the disease. There also is an opportunity to include an evaluation by a third party. There are occupational therapists who have been trained to do driving evaluations on people with the disease. And we are very proud of our Dementia and Driving Resource Center on ALZ.org. It actually has a number of videos that talk about the different types of conversations that can happen within a family. One being that really difficult conversation where you have a resistant person who doesn't want to give up driving. There's another video on there that talks about the person with the disease who's actually initiating the conversation with the family because they want to put a plan in place. But we also have resources there and have a link to the American Occupational Therapy Association where you actually put in your state and it will tell you where these occupational therapists are to do that evaluation. And some of our advisors have gone through that process and they'll go back for retesting, but it really does give you at least a baseline of the person's ability to drive and then when that person should no longer be driving. And then understand and recognize that this may not be, it may be the first of many conversations about the issue, but it is not one that you should give up on, that you should continue to have, and again, just focus on those alternative transportation options that might be able to help that person stay engaged in socializing and remain as independent as they possibly can.
Great. Thank you so much, Monica. Wow, those are some very, very practical, and then I think some new tips that people probably weren't aware of, and even being reminded of some of the practical things like having that conversation early on, writing an agreement and writing it down. Those are just real important tips for everybody. So thank you for sharing them.
Thank you.
So we want to ensure that you all have our contact information because we know that many of you asked questions that we could not address today. As we shared, as Monica shared rather, they do have a 24/7 helpline available through the Alzheimer's Association, and you can see the number there on your screen. You can also go to alz.org, and it's prominently featured there if you need it. So if you have questions that have not been answered, please avail yourselves of that wonderful resource. If you have particular questions related to Lotsa Helping Hands or using the Care Team calendar, or you need help getting started, you can reach us at support@lotshelpinghands.com, and we have round-the-clock help for you through our member support center. So we encourage you to continue to share with us and connect with us and let us know how we can help wherever you might be in your caregiving journey. In closing, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. Specifically, I want to thank Monica so much and the Alzheimer's Association for sharing such important information today with our listeners. Our heartfelt gratitude, Carol, to you for sharing your story. We know that it will remain with us for many, many days and months to come. You really spoke so candidly and so thoughtfully about your experience, and in so doing, are helping to ensure that caregivers who are listening today, perhaps not feeling as alone as when the hour began. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. I again want to acknowledge our sponsor, the Alzheimer's Immunotherapy Program of Janssen Alzheimer Immunotherapy and Pfizer, for funding for this webinar. And in closing, on behalf of the entire team here at Lotsa Helping Hands, I want to thank all of you who are listening to the webinar today. We appreciate so much your interest in this topic, the overwhelming response that we received to this webinar, and your participation is a strong reminder of how important it is to pay attention to the needs of our nation's caregivers, and in particular to those who are caring for loved ones with Alzheimer's disease. So I hope this was an hour well spent for you, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon. We encourage you to check back at our website and view a recording of this webinar and to register for future webinars that we provide. Thank you very much.